5 million people have died needlessly. Actually, that amount of people, I was doing a backward calculation for 6 months. Can you imagine 5 to 10 people a year being saved? That's gone. Okay? So between 5 to 10 people are dying needlessly of cancer, which should have been caught.
5 to 10 people.
5 to 10 million people. Thank you. And that's just cancer. Then we go on to depression, suicide, heart attacks, any other kind of disorder that you can think of. And then we have operations that are required.
I think we talked about this in the beginning when the pandemic hit. Let's call it giving it the benefit of the doubt. Let's say, argument's sake, that the reason, not that I agree, but let's say the reasons for the lockdown were to give the NHS time to catch up and get ready for the amount of patients that they will be having because, let's just argument's sake, hypothetically speaking, that's the reason why lockdowns were put into place. Okay, fine. Now, what I do not understand, I said this at the beginning of this podcast, is at what point, and I'm not devaluing anybody who's had the coronavirus, who's had the respiratory problems, who has been really ill, because there are people that have been really ill and some have passed away. I know of friends who actually passed away.
As happens every year with the flu.
Correct, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, at which point did the health secretary or senior ministers in the health department say, right, we believe that somebody who suffers from cancer, somebody who suffers from kidney disease, somebody who suffers from whatever, from heart failure, is not as important as somebody who's got a very, very, very strong flu, or sorry to say 5 times the strength of flu called coronavirus, is more important than anything else. In fact, what we'll do is we'll park everything else, everybody else, put them to one side, put them in a queue, even the ones that were currently going through cancer treatment. I'm not talking about the ones that were being diagnosed. I'm talking about the ones that were hoping to extend their lives by weeks, by months with their loved ones that they couldn't cuddle because of the restrictions, which is another thing. Yet it's their decision at the end of the day. And yet they were actually told to say, sorry, but your next appointment, cancelled. Your next session, chemo, whatever, cancelled.
And your loved one also, who, yes, they're suffering from dementia and they're in a care home, they will now live out the rest of their lives without any human contact from their family. And they will die alone.
And do we have any statistics? Of course we don't, because that would be a balanced argument. Care homes, do we have any statistics? And I've seen cases myself, I've gone on television, but I've seen cases of people coming forward, blogging, and real people saying, I couldn't visit my older father who's got early dementia. He has deteriorated so much in 6 months that he barely recognizes me.
Well, actually, we do have the statistics.
Because of the lack of human contact?
No, we do have the statistics. And it's a very simple one. Once you're in a care home, your average lifespan is 2.5 years. Therefore, in 1 year, half of these people will have died alone without any human family contact.
Anybody who runs a care home, any senior nurse, doctor who's in a care home, and I've visited quite a few care homes in my past for work purposes, will tell you that human contact is the number one thing that keeps those patients going, from a mental point of view, from a psychological point of view, from helping with their morale. It's a major.
All the main studies on longevity of life and quality of life come up with human contact being number one. Not just that, but a very interesting study we've talked about several times in Africa showed that just empathic human contact was as effective, if not more effective, than consultant psychiatrists.
So to go back to mental health, the thing which concerns me is you've got the government acknowledging, or let's say the key so-called learned ones acknowledging that mental health hasn't been really addressed for the last 30 years, at least since the 90s, properly, in terms of resources, in terms of really tackling it properly, and really making sure there are points of contact and easy ways of people who have mental health contacting via their GP. And going back to that point, a GP, a good doctor. Now, I'm going back to an example in my father's village. A good doctor. Let's go back to the basics of what it's all about. A good doctor. Yes, he's got many years of experience, many years of studies. You don't become a doctor overnight. It's at least a 10-year process, plus. To get to be in that position, it's not something you're given online, a certificate given online. Yet their key role in, let's say, a small town or village is to listen to the patient. And that famous English sentence of "How are you?" when you walk into a doctor's surgery, and the first thing the patient says is, "Oh, I'm okay," and then the doctor says, "No, how are you?" And then the patient says, "Oh, actually, right, here we go." And actually, a lot of it is psychological and mental health. And a lot of it is just, it's in the head. It's loneliness, it's isolation, it's...
well, that's why they've got a minister for loneliness. That's why they started prescribing socialization groups to the old people. Isn't that interesting? Finally. Well, of course, that's been stymied, hasn't it? And the other thing to bear in mind is that everyone's sense of control is the number one key to your stress level. If you're in control, you're not stressed. If you're not in control, you're stressed. Imagine, therefore, the psychological effect of saying, oh, vaccines are our pathway out of this, aren't they? And suddenly, no, you both have your vaccines, 2 vaccines, please, and then we're going to need boosters. And actually, you still have to have your PCR test, and you still can't go out. And what a load of drivel.
Staying at home and not working is the best thing for you at the moment.
Yes.
And for many, many months, until February of this year, so until 11 months since the government took control.
And what they pick on is they say, well, some of you travel 2 hours to work. You can avoid all that by staying at home now.
So for 11
Lucky you.
months, there was no roadmap, there was no guidance, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. No, but there was even a statement of dates, there was nothing. And it was a case of, right, we'll carry on this way, and we'll carry on scaring you in order to control you. But by the way, at the moment, we kind of maybe know, but we won't acknowledge the fact that you've lost your livelihood, or that you are really stressed, or that you're using your savings because you're trying to get through.
There's someone who's written a book on the psychological techniques used by the government to maintain compliance. And she has said on record that minister that she spoke to have admitted to her that when they introduced the mask mandate last summer, it was nothing to do with science. It was simply to keep up the fear so people would comply in the autumn again.
So if we can summarize, I think we're coming to the end of this wonderful podcast. If we can summarize a little bit, or if you can summarize, please, Theo, on let's leave a positive note on what you can do to try and mitigate all these lockdown measures and the mental effects out of people, as in socializing, seeing your nearest and dearest, being with close friends now that you're allowed.
Well, I'm going to say something, and we'll talk about this much more in another podcast.
Okay.
One of my clients has asked me to help him be a better father to his children. And thinking about it, as you know, I constantly try and distill things down. And what I told him is that you've got to stop trying to cocoon your kids with ideals and fantasy. The key thing with children is you have to help them deal with reality, because we are designed to deal with reality. That's how we survive. And as soon as you stop dealing with reality, you're entering a world of trouble. So therefore, I would say to everyone in the current climate, don't listen to the news, because you know most of it is nonsense, or at least cherry-picked and misrepresented or exaggerated. So, and you're not an expert. You're not capable of understanding what they're telling you anyway, because they don't even understand most of it. Deal with the reality of your family. Focus just on that. Focus on your family and your friends, and enjoy the moment.
And if I can add very quickly to that point, if you switch off and do not listen to the news for a week, 7 days, 2 weekends and 5 days in between, call that 9 days or whatever it is, a week, and you do not listen to the BBC, Sky News, no TV media, no social media, forget Twitter, and you lead your life for a week, you know what will happen? Nothing. You'll actually focus on your life, and you'll be more enriched than being fed with all this propaganda and negativity.
It's Father's Day.
Indeed.
My 5-year-old son came back from school with a wonderful little card saying, "I love you, L-A-V. I love you, Daddy." Now, I couldn't be happier. That, for me,
That's all
is
that matters.
correct.
That's it. Thank you very much.
The reality.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.